Comic Book Savant, episode 418. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is going to be a spoiler-filled review for the new Marvel Studios release, Captain Marvel. If you haven't had a chance to see the movie yet, I implore you to stop the podcast now until you get a chance to see the movie, unless you want to be spoiled on what happens in the movie. If you are on the fence about wanting to go see the movie, you can go by youtube.com/comic book savant, and I have a non-spoiler review online there now. So if you haven't seen the movie and you want to know what my non-spoiler thoughts are on Captain Marvel, you can go over to youtube.com/comic book savant, and I have a quick non-spoiler review listed there for you to check out. So with all that being said, we're going to jump into this spoiler review. Captain Marvel is directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. It was written by Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, Nicole Perlman, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Meg LaFever, and Geneva Robertson Dorrit. And the breakdown is as follows. Carol Danvers becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races. And we have Brie Larson as Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Captain Marvel. We have Gemma Chan as Minerva. We have Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury. We have Lee Pace reprising his role as Ronan the Accuser. We have Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. We have Jude Law as Yon-Rogg. Yeah, that's it. We have Lashana Lynch as Maria Rambeau. We have Akira Akbar as Monica Rambeau. Clark Gregg reprising his role as Agent Coulson, Jaman Hansu reprising his role as Korath, and Annette Bening as Marvel / the Supreme Intelligence. And I have to say, going into the movie, I wasn't overly hyped by the trailers that had been released on Captain Marvel. I know I do all the reviews, so I knew I was going to see it regardless. And it was funny, as some of the later trailers came out, my wife, which, basically, again, she's like the silent partner in the podcast I always talk about, she actually got more excited, which I was more curious to see how she was going to anticipate the movie, being that, this is Marvel's first female-led superhero film, and she really enjoyed Wonder Woman, and she goes and sees all the movies with me, and I was really curious because, again, it was more targeted towards a female audience, so I wanted to know what her take was on it. And I tend to notice, as I've done more of these reviews over the years, and I can't even count how many films I've reviewed. I think on the podcast over the years, I've literally have reviewed every single Marvel cinematic movie release to date, if I'm not mistaken. And during that time, most of the time, me and her pretty much have been married since the very, very beginning. Maybe the first 2 years, because we've been almost 9 years, something like that. For the majority of the time, we've been together, and we've seen most of the movies together. And so, I notice more things now, like when I go into the theater. And, I had something, it was real sobering recently. We had went to go see Fighting With My Family, which is a movie on the female wrestler Paige's early wrestling career. And it was the most shocking thing when we went into the movie. And sometimes I try to peep at the crowd to kind of see what the audience is when we go in. And surprisingly enough, it was no women. She was the only woman in the theater with me to see that movie, and I thought it was strange because I was like, well, Paige, I mean, she had some controversial things happen to her and then her career ended shortly due to, injury, really, really prematurely, because she's still relatively young. So it had a kind of tragic end, but they kind of cut this off like at the highlight of her short wrestling career. But, I thought it was an empowering story, and even though she had some negative things happen to her, and, it was like things about sex tape just being leaked and all that kind of stuff, I still thought she's still a positive role model in how she's overcome all the negative stuff that happened to her as well. She's still a positive role model for females. And I thought, in the advertising that it would have pushed more females to come out to the movie. But like I said, she was only female. So I was really, and maybe this was the release of Captain Marvel was lined up with International Women's Day. But I did like that it was a ton of females in the crowd. It was equal females to males in the crowd. Well, no, actually it was slightly more females than males in the crowd when we went to our showing of Captain Marvel, which I was happy to see because, we're as men are represented heavily in all of these superhero films, and it is more than just us watching and supporting these comics, these shows, and these movies at this point. Women are a big demographic, and it's cool seeing them finally represented, on the screen, from Marvel. Though these play significant supportive roles, it's really cool to see them in the forefront. So that was one thing that was striking to me, that I felt like that's a positive upswing, with the Me Too movement, and not trying to get all political, but with all the different things that have been thrown out there in the past, year to 2 years. It's good to see, because I feel like certain times that women, you have all that hoopla, but then when it comes out to the actual support of these things, you don't see women support one another. So it was good to see that being different, because I was so disappointed when I went to go see wrestling, fighting with my family, that it was like barely no women there. To hear it was a complete opposite. So I give Marvel props for aligning it with International Women's Day, and just, give or take all the political stuff with certain things that Brie Larson said and how it rubbed certain people the wrong way. Me personally, I didn't come into the movie with any expectations. I don't, subscribe to any of that, and I don't get into all that press stuff. I just try to focus on the movie itself, how entertaining it is, and that's what I judge the movie on. I don't add or have any other preconceived notions or agendas going into watching the movie, and when I review it for you guys, I just try to keep it. I try to be unbiased as possible and go in and just base it on what I know about the character, or if I know nothing about the character, how much the movie informs me of the character. And I have to say, like, with me having, like, not being super, hype about the movie going in, and, I had little to no expectations going in, which I try to do with every movie, but, certain movies you're more attached to. Now, I do have to give some background with my history with Carol Danvers. It's a character I fell in love with during House of M, and coming out of House of M, when they gave her own series, which was Miss Marvel, and I read that run of Miss Marvel, and then I fell off from mainstream Marvel for a long time, and I haven't read any of the more current Captain Marvel when she did the name change. At that point, coming out of House of M, when they launched and gave her the Miss Marvel series, she was still Miss Marvel. That series ran I think it ran maybe like 50 issues or more. And then it relaunched later, and then that's when it really took off, when she did the name change, the costume change, and really adapted the moniker of Captain Marvel. But as a character I fell in love with way back then, and if you go back 200-300 episodes, I reviewed that comic a lot. I really loved it. I talked about the potential of the character, and I spoke heavily back then about if Marvel really invests, she could be a Class A hero, because back then she was like probably a C/D list character, and now she's a high level A-list character for them, which I really, I saw it back then. I saw the potential in the character, and they let the right writers, they put the right support over the years, and really built her up into the character I saw her to be. And I love that, because I just loved her story I related to her, even though I'm a man. I related to. She had a ton of bad things happen to her. You know, she battled with alcoholism at a point and different things, and I related to it because my father was an alcoholic for a long time, and then he cleaned himself up, and those things, attached me to her. It made me love her as a character because I saw that, and I saw the struggle my dad had and how he came out the better side of it, and how much of a better man he became. So it immediately kind of imprinted to her and made me love her as a character. So that's why I had a personal attachment to her. So I was questioning. Now the biggest question or biggest thing I think I was skeptical about going in the movie, I didn't necessarily know if Brie Larson was the right individual to be Carol Danvers based on what I knew of the character, especially, what I read and just the physical buildup, because I tend to have thought of Carol because they kind of always made her very muscular, kind of beefy, muscular female, like a Caucasian. I always kind of thought of Carol to be like how Serena, in her heyday, where she was really ripped and muscular. I always kind of thought of Carol as the Caucasian version of kind of Serena. She's statuesque, has muscle, but still curvy. So I was well, she's kind of frail and I always thought Carol was really a tomboy, hard nosed, she can get in there and beat somebody up type. And I was Bree's kind of, kind of feminine and I was she's kind of flimsy, but I have to say that was one thing right from the outset of the movie. Brie, she's an Oscar winning actress, and she proves it off the gate. She nails the attitude so much of Carol. I was that's just her snarky attitude, cockiness even. She nailed it. And I had no questions. They addressed that at the very beginning of the movie. She was very much Carol Danvers. And I was after that, I was good, because that was my biggest concern. I feel going into the movie, could she really sell being Carol? And she nailed it, I believe. And I have to say, I really enjoyed the humor of the movie. This was one of the funnier MCU movies for me. I feel I'm going to compare Ant-Man and the Wasp to this movie a lot for some reason. I don't know. While I was watching the movie, it made me think back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, where I felt Ant-Man and the Wasp tried real hard to be funny. And a lot of the jokes, especially in the last movie, it felt Ant-Man was a lot better than Ant-Man and the Wasp as far as that part was concerned. And I felt they really pushed too hard to be funny, and a lot of the jokes fell flat, where for me a lot of these jokes hit and landed, so it was even more humor than what I anticipated in the movie. Also, I want to talk about performances, because we had the inclusion of characters since this movie was set in the 90s, and we had a lot of we had a young Nick Fury in the movie, which played a really integral part, even probably more so than what I anticipated going into the movie, that how much of a role he was going to play in it. And it was really cool to kind of see that young Nick Fury, him, kind of newly minted in S.H.I.E.L.D. He had been in S.H.I.E.L.D. for a little bit. And Coulson being partnered with him, and him being a rookie. Now, we had the inclusion of Agent Coulson, Ronan the Accuser, and Korath that were they really didn't need to be in a movie because they had so little time in the movie, and their characters weren't really fleshed out. It was cool that they were in there, even though I don't feel it wasn't really a need for them, but it was cool seeing them in there just for the great connective tissue in the world building. Since you're going to include the Kree, we knew Ronan was Kree, so him with that brief disappearance connects that, because that was the only really thing that we knew of the Kree was through Ronan and Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Guardians of the Galaxy. So seeing more of the Kree and kind of seeing what his position was in the Kree. And we saw that Korath was a member of Star Force, which was the Kree police force that Carol was a part of, and that he was one of the warriors with it. So it was cool, interesting to see that he was a part of that team. And And you kind of got hints throughout the movie in one scene kind of where Korath would kind of peel away from kind of Star Force, and kind of you saw the seeds being planted there where his allegiance could shift towards Ronan, based on the one scene there towards the end of the movie, which I thought was really neat. It was very interesting for the twist of, well, there was a few twists in the movie. We had a whole twist of the Tesseract being the source that gave Carol her powers. That was interesting. It made sense because it tied back in. And even the appearance itself of the Tesseract, that was interesting. But I feel like it needed to kind of be there because you kind of, you want all this stuff to connect. So I felt like that was a good thing to tie into it all. And then the other big reveal was the twist of the Skrulls not being evil and actually the villain of the movie, and actually it being Young Rog. That was interesting because I'm just so used to from the comic book so much over the years that Skrulls being evil, that seeing that shift of Talos actually just really searching and trying to find his family was a really great twist. And Ben Mendelsohn was like phenomenal in this movie. He was so funny. He was sinister when he needed to be. He was comical. I feel like a lot of that was improv with him just really having fun with the character. And it wasn't cheesy and it wasn't over the top. It was like perfectly toned. And I don't think any other actor could have nailed that balance quite like Ben Mendelsohn did in the movie. I love, like, I can't wait to have this movie on home video and to watch it again because I laughed so much. Like, I did not expect to laugh as much as I did throughout the movie, and his scenes got the most laughs I think throughout the whole film and the viewing that I did. I thought changing the gender of Mar-Vell was really cool, and once we got that reveal of Annette Bening being that, and that was why in the Supreme Intelligence that she most admired her, and that was the face that she kept seeing, and that reveal of her being Mar-Vell was like really cool. And it was cool they swapped the gender of Mar-Vell, and because everybody was looking for Mar-Vell maybe to be Jude Law, and then we found out he was Young Rog. So we knew kind of from the comics that he had a kind of villainous history, so he was going to be some combination of villain or the main villain, what he ended up being in this film. And I had to say the movie overall surprised me because I didn't, I kind of felt like, well, it's going to be all right. This is going to be, we have different, I feel like there are different tiers of Marvel movies. And I kind of felt like this was going to be like an Ant-Man and a Wasp, or, maybe Captain America of the first Avenger, not a grand slam, but it's good, it's decent, it's solid. But it really exceeded my anticipations, and it's one of my big surprises as far as Marvel movies. As far as like a lot of times, what I feel like what the movie might be going in, and then what I feel what it was coming out, and it's funny because I'm always in kind of review mode. I've done this for so many years now. Like when I go into the movie, like I'm enjoying the movie. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the movie, but then I'm processing it as I'm like kind of sitting there on my way home. Me and my wife we'll sit and we'll talk about the movie, and it's so funny. It's like we're so in sync now. So like we're driving home. So I'm like, babe, what do you score the movie? Like we all, And so she was like, well, I'm thinking this is like an 8.5, and I was like, yeah, like we've been around each other too long, because certain times too, I need to sit down and like I'll come home. After we watch a movie, we'll talk about the movie the whole time on the way home, and even after we get back home. And then, like, I'll sit down and I'll start. I already have my notes, kind of my outline for the episode that I'm going to record already kind of in there. And I have a section for notes, and I'll just hit bullet points that I want to talk about. And, like, I'll sit and kind of flesh it out to help me flesh out a score. It was like, soon as the movie ended and the credits were rolling, and I was waiting for the end credit scenes to, to come up or whatever, I'm sitting there and it was just like, I just kept seeing it in my head. 8.5, 8.5, 8.5. It was just like so clear, like that's what this is, 8.5, just 8.5. Which was weird because, certain movies, like I said, I have to come home and I'll start writing out notes, and then I'll start sussing out, and trying to round out what the score was, in my honest opinion. But I knew it was like dead on that this movie was like, it was that good, for me. And I'm like, I love the first end credit scene where we see Bree show up once the pager finally shuts off, and then they turn around and they see her. That is what the Captain Marvel I want to see. Because I feel like the one, because this movie's not perfect, don't get me wrong. Now, I feel like some of the large amount of criticism is unfounded to the movie. Like I said, for me, it's like an 8.5. It's just what it was. But I felt like one of the weaknesses of the film is the script. Because this movie's gonna kind of go, I feel like it's gonna go down in history for some people. It's going to be like Avengers Age of Ultron. And I recently, when I did earlier last year, the end of last year, beginning of this year, when I did my 50th favorite comic book movies. So I went back and rewatched a lot of those films when I was coming up with the rankings. And one movie I went back and watched was Avengers Age of Ultron. And, so many people, it made money. It did extremely well. But a lot of people criticized it and felt like it wasn't nearly as good as the first Avengers movie. I beg to differ. Going back and watching that movie now and seeing all the stuff it was forced to set up, and which was one of Joss Whedon's biggest issues, was that like he had to serve, Kevin Feige had put so many restrictions on him, so many things that he had to cover. He had to set up Black Panther in that movie. He had to set up Ragnarok in that movie. He had to set up so many different things. He had to set up Civil War in that movie. And when you go back and watch it now, seeing all the stuff that they had to set up come to fruition and see them, it makes that movie way more powerful now. It just was tasked with that unfortunate heft of having to serve all these additional masters to set up so much of the future MCU in that one film, plus tell its own story. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with Captain Marvel, or one of the only down parts I feel, is that the script, she's a great actress, but they didn't give her enough to play with and to really grow out her character a ton, because they have to set up so much more for Endgame, and kind of set up seeds and things for what we're going to see, excuse me, in the MCU post Endgame. In this movie, you had to introduce Skrulls. The Kree, we're going to see them again in the future. They want to go more cosmic. We're introduced to other cosmic elements. We saw a few new planets we hadn't seen before. The light engine that Marvel was working on. All these things we're going to see. They want to double down. We know about future movies that are going to be coming that have been announced. We know that an Eternals movie is coming with the introduction of Thanos. We know these things are coming down the pike, and they have to be kind of set up in this movie, especially with the shift of things with Guardians, which we don't know if we're ever going to get Guardians 3, or, how's that going to go with the whole thing with James Gunn, or when that movie might come out. So this movie had to further set up these other cosmic elements, which deterred from her getting a true full-on origin story similar to what we got with other characters, and we couldn't see her too soon. So I feel like in game she's going to play an important part, and flesh out her character more. And then with the eventual sequel that I hope we get from this movie, that, she'll be way more established. And I think she'll be more fully formed, because now we know it's that time jump from when she left in the 90s at the end of the film to Endgame, that, it's been roughly like 20 years. And we saw that she was a little bit more weathered. She looked a little bit more experienced with her powers and where she's at. So this is prime Carol Danvers we're going to see. So that's the character I'm going to see going forward. And I feel like Bree's going to kill that. So, I can't wait to see Endgame now, just to see more of her more experienced self in that movie, because I feel like that they underutilize so many characters, including Carol, to the sake of the overall overarching story, because all these things are connected together. You kind of have to set them up and get the ball rolling for that stuff to make sense. But I feel like she's going to be one of the main focuses of Endgame now, coming out of Captain Marvel. But I really, like I said, I was shocked how much I really enjoyed the movie. You know, I have my rating scale where I break it up into my 5 categories. Acting, I gave it 8 out of 10. Casting, I think, was a 10 out of 10. I felt like all the casting was really spot on. The direction, I gave 8 out of 10. Visual effects, 8 out of 10. And story, 8 out of 10. So rounding that up, gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Which on my scale is like a date night rental. I really look forward for this coming out to home video. I don't tend to go see movies twice in the movie theaters. If I had free time, I would go see this again because I had so much fun with it. But we know that, we have, in less than a month now, we have, Shazam coming out. Then another 2, then we have, a couple of weeks after Shazam, we have Endgame. A couple of weeks after that, we have, X-Men Dark Phoenix, and so on and so forth. It's like it's going to be a hot, jam-packed summer, so we're going to be doing tons of these spoiler reviews. Let me know what you guys thought, about the movie. For sure, I want to hear your thoughts and what you thought about the movie. So definitely, you can always send me an email. You can just send it at comicbooksavant@gmail.com, or you can just go to the website, which is comicbooksavant.com, and you can just send me an email through the website as well. So if you ever forget the email address, you can go right to the website and do that. If you guys haven't already, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can join the Patreon campaign at patreon.com/comicbooksavant. I have links all on the website. So if you go to comicbooksavant.com, now I have the navigation link right at the top. So you should see, now if you're on your mobile phone, I think it's a little, let me pull it up right now on my phone so I can take, because the navigation main bar is not fully at the top. I think it's a little, let me see how it is at the top. If you just click menu at the very top, then it'll have it. I have a link for, if you want to do a one-time donation, you can do that. Patreon, I have a link and it'll take you to the Patreon page. Also have the store link up there now. And I also have the bookshelf link. Again, if anything I talk about or anything I recommend as far as different books and stuff like that, I have my Amazon affiliate links up there. If you want to click on that link and pick up anything that I suggest, you can do that. All that helps go into the show, help support the show. So if you can do one of the above, I greatly appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys for spreading the word of the show. We just broke over 250 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which I appreciate. I see you guys retweeting out the episodes. I love the feedback. Respond to me. Hit me up on Twitter. It's at Comic Book Savant, or even on Instagram. Give me a follow on both if you haven't already. Both are at Comic Book Savant. I'm going to try to be more active in posting, but once I get, when I get responses from you guys, or if I get questions for you guys about stuff, I respond to it as soon as I see it. I'm going to try to be more active and take some more behind the scenes photos and stuff like that. It's a lot. It's real boring because I'm reading comic books a lot or watching comic book stuff to do reviews on. So I try to think of real creative ways to get supplement of stuff up on the feed outside of just when new episodes drop. So I am working on that. So bear with me when it comes to that. Again, like I said, your support has been awesome. The subscriptions, like I said, on the YouTube channel are growing. I'm seeing more and more retweets. I'm getting more and more just through the Facebook group. I have a link to the Facebook group. If you go there, click, just request to join. As soon as I see it, I'll approve it. We've been more active talking to one another there. And I throw out different show ideas, and we just talk about comics too. So definitely check out the Facebook group if you have time as well. I just love interacting with you guys, and that input I get from you guys, I put directly back into the show. So Definitely do all that. Don't forget to check out my spinner rack bro, Heath Holland, over at Cereal at Midnight, midnight.com. I have the links on the website as well to his site. We're when we've been doing our episodes of Spinner Rack Bros, the last episode we did was actually on his YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com youtube.com/Serial Midnight. And you can go over there and see the last episode of Spinner Rack Bros. We did a video episode for him. We should have an audio episode coming up this month to drop. We alternate. We do, one audio for mine, and then we'll do a video for on his channel. So be on the lookout for a new episode of Spinner Rack Bros coming up very soon. And that's all I have for you guys for this episode. I will see you guys next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys have a good week, and I will see you soon. Take care.